Welcome to the presentation on participials. I'm your host, Ms. Rickert. Now, what are participials? Participials describe nouns or pronouns. A pronoun would be he, she, it, them. Sarah, obviously, would be a noun. Participials describe what the nouns are doing. Participials look like verbs. Now, they aren't really verbs, they're participials, but they kind of look like verbs. They do have predictable endings. So oftentimes with present participial, you're going to see it ending in ing, but past participles end in en or ed. They cannot stand by themselves. They cannot make their own sentences. So these are all things that are very unique to participials. Remember that appositives replace nouns. It's a noun in and of itself, but a participial describes the noun and looks more like a verb. To make matters more complicated, they sometimes go in a comma ghetto and sometimes they don't. So if it is essential, the participial, then obviously you're not going to put it into a comma ghetto, because when you put something into a comma ghetto, what you're telling your reader is that you can drop it, that it's non-essential. For example, the man wearing the Panama hat is the one who did it. Obviously, we need to know which man we're talking about. It's the one wearing the Panama hat. So we cannot drop it. That is an essential participial. Here's another one. The idea troubling Douglas amounted to a doubt that, again, which idea? It's the idea troubling Douglas. We cannot drop it. It is essential. It does not go in a comma ghetto. On the other hand, there are plenty of non-essential examples. And I do have to warn you that most of the time when we write participials in class, we're going to be writing examples of non-essential participials. So for instance, Joseph, comma, wearing a Panama hat, comma, committed the crime. And here's a nonfiction example. Douglas, comma, plagued by the doubt that perhaps he had oversimplified his argument, comma, begins his speech with. Again, you can drop these things. We could have a perfectly good sentence that read, Douglas begins his speech. This is extra information that is not essential. Now, there is a difference between past and present participles, and of course, appositives. Appositives, once again, are replacement nouns. Joseph, one of the tallest men of the village, wore a fedora. That is another way of saying Joseph. We could replace Joseph with one of the tallest men of the village. Present participles always end in ing. Joseph, towering over all the other men in the village, wore a fedora. So this is not a noun. It looks like a verb, although it isn't, but it describes Joseph instead of replacing him. Past participles take the had form of a verb. Now what I mean by that is if you said the word had, the next word would be the form of the participial. So had shaken, shaken is the participial. Had run, run is the participial. Had baked, baked is the participial. We don't actually use the word had, but that reminds us what the form is for the past participial. The sense for past participles is that something is being done to the noun by somebody else. The noun is sort of a passive recipient of whatever is being done. So instead of Joseph is towering over all the other men, we've got Joseph, known as the tallest man in the village, wore a fedora. Who knows him? Somebody else knows him as the tallest man in the village. He is known by the village. Or Joseph, baked mercilessly in the sun throughout the afternoon, wore a fedora at night. Now, please remember, I'm not saying that Joseph was baking a cake in the sun. I am saying that the sun was baking him. He's recipient of the sun's baking, and that's why it's the past participial. There's a word of warning. Participials must be directly adjacent or next to nouns that they describe, just like in a positive. So let me give you an example. Marty suddenly thought of Halloween, of the winter and snowballs standing there in the middle of the street. Now, hopefully you see that there's something wrong here, because what's standing in the street? Are the snowballs standing in the street? That's kind of what it sounds like, given that standing there, the participial, is right next to snowballs. However, we should realize that it's Marty standing there in the middle of the street. So we need to move that participial to another part of the sentence. Standing there in the middle of the street, Marty suddenly thought of Halloween, of the winter and snowballs. So there, we have the participial at the beginning, right next to Marty. As long as they are adjacent to the noun they describe, they can go anywhere, similarly to appositives. They can be openers, Whistling, he let the escalator waft him into the still night air. They can be subject to verb split, that's in the middle of the sentence. The sight of Mick's exploring beam of light, flashing and flickering through the submarine darkness a few yards away, reminded them that he was not alone. Or they can be at the end of a sentence. The entire crowd in the saloon gathered around me now, urging me to drink. The magician patted his hand, holding it quietly with a thumb on its blue vein, waiting for life to revive. You notice that the last one has two participles right next to each other with no conjunction, and that is perfectly appropriate. You can put two participles next to each other because we can drop both of them. Also, the entire crowd sentence, that second to last sentence, you'll notice that urging me to drink is very close to me. So you might be thinking, hey, it's not next to the entire crowd. But it's clear from context that me wouldn't be urging me to drink. So it's clear that it's the crowd that's doing the urging. Participials get lonely. Please, don't ever let them go to a party alone. She says she dislikes dresses, meaning that she would rather wear pants. You've let your participial in that second sentence go to a party alone, and that participial has gotten very lonely. Remember, participles cannot be in their own sentence. This is wrong. Instead, we need to have, she says she dislikes dresses, comma, meaning that she would rather wear pants. Now, I use the word meaning intentionally here because that is one of the most common mistakes that people make with participles, especially with words like meaning or judging or saying. They oftentimes want to put that at the beginning of a sentence all by itself. But remember, participles, those ing words, they get lonely. If you start with an ing participial, make sure it comes with an IC friend to that party. Judging from the fact that she doesn't wear dresses. Again, you've let your participial go to the party alone. Really not cool. So, sometimes the IC friend is in the sentence before, and sometimes you need to add it. Judging from the fact that she doesn't wear dresses, comma, one could surmise that she is more of a tomboy. Here, I added it to the end. But it's possible it was simply in the sentence before. Her friends have started to label her as a tomboy, judging from the fact that she doesn't wear dresses. Now, this is still incorrect. You would need to put a comma in between these two sentences so that the IC is friends with the participial, and the participial does not go to the party alone. Now, why are we studying participles? Just like appositives, it's not just so we can punctuate correctly. It's not because we like to sound nerdy. And it's not so we can write better fiction or sentences about people. It is so we can compose more interesting and varied sentences in argumentation. So, a lot of our examples have been fictional. Let's see if we can make the argumentation sentences. Here's fiction. Looking over their own troops, they saw mixed masses slowly getting into regular form. Here's argumentation. Here's my original sentence. Advertising creates a need for unnecessary products. Now, I'm going to add a participial. Bombarding its viewers with visions of a more peaceful or satisfying lifestyle, comma, advertising creates a need for unnecessary products. So, let's practice unscrambling. You must write out the complete sentence every time, just like we've done with the positives. Please make sure that you are not just writing A, D, C, E. Your brain will not learn anything that way. So, we've got our three parts here. Now let's see if we can put them into an order. We've got unscrambled. Now there are actually a bunch of different ways we can do this. Bernard, comma, wearing a black turtleneck sweater, dirty flannels, and slippers, was waiting on the landing outside. This is appropriate. We can also put it at the beginning, the participial. Wearing a black turtleneck sweater, dark flannels, and slippers, comma, Bernard was waiting on the landing outside. Or we could put it at the end. Bernard was waiting on the landing outside, wearing a black turtleneck, etc. The reason why we can put it anywhere in the sentence is because there's really only one noun that we're describing, Bernard. And it's such a short sentence, such a short IC, that adding a participial we really can do anywhere. Now, you're going to take a quiz on Edmodo. Please make sure that you use your notes as necessary. I don't want to trip you up. I want to make sure that you understand these things. And good luck. I'll see you in class.